My name is Danielle, and I just turned 28. I've always believed birthdays were special a day when you feel seen and celebrated. Today I sat alone at a table for 8 watching the restaurant doors swing open for everyone but my family. When I finally called my mom, her words cut deeper than any knife. I just wanted one day. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you, most leave a comment about where you're watching from, hit like and subscribe to join others who understand what it means to create your own family. I grew up in a household where excellence wasn't celebrated, it was expected. My father, Dr. Richard Thompson, was a renowned cardiothoracic surgeon whose hands saved countless lives. My mother, Catherine Thompson, climbed the corporate ladder to become one of the top lawyers at her firm. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family living in our beautiful Boston suburb home with its pristine lawn and tasteful holiday decorations. Then there was my younger sister, Sophia. She was the golden child from the moment she could speak. By age 4, she was reading chapter books. By 12, she was competing in national mathematics competitions. My parents beamed with pride at each award ceremony, each honor roll announcement. They never missed a single one of her academic decathlons or science fairs. I was different. From the time I could hold a crayon, I was drawn to colors, shapes, and the way light falls across objects. Art spoke to me in a language that felt like home. My elementary school teachers praised my natural talent. My high school art instructor insisted I had a unique perspective that couldn't be taught. But in our household, art was considered a hobby, not a calling. "Drawing is lovely, Danielle," my mother would say when I showed her a piece I'd worked on for weeks. "But how will that get you into a good college?" She'd barely glance up from her legal briefs. My father was kinder but no more understanding. "It's wonderful that you enjoy your art classes, sweetheart, but have you considered taking more science courses that AP biology class would look good on your transcripts?" I still remember my first major art show in 10th grade. I'd spent months creating a series of paintings that explored themes of visibility and recognition. My art teacher had given me a prime spot in the school gallery. I'd sent my parents multiple reminders, even marking it on the family calendar in the kitchen. The evening of the show, I stood by my display watching the door each time it opened. Other parents arrived, congratulated their children, took photos. 2 hours passed. My teacher gave me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder as she locked up the gallery. When I got home, I found my parents and Sophia gathered around the dining room table, celebrating her acceptance into a prestigious summer program at MIT. "Oh, Danielle was that tonight." My mother frowned when I asked why they hadn't come. "Sophia just got this wonderful news and we decided to celebrate. You understand, don't you? You can always show us your pictures tomorrow." That became the pattern of my life. Dance recitals where I scanned an audience without their faces. School events where other parents took pity and photographed me for my own family album. College application decisions celebrated with just my roommate because my parents were attending Sophia's debate championship. After graduating with my art education degree, I decided I needed space to breathe. I moved across the country to Portland, Oregon, where I secured a position teaching art to elementary school children. My students' uninhibited joy in creation reminded me daily why I'd fallen in love with art in the first place. Their wide eyes and gasps when I demonstrated a new technique healed parts of me I hadn't realized were wounded. In Portland, I found my people. Amanda, who taught 3rd grade in the classroom next to my art room, became my first real friend. She had wild curly hair and a laugh that made everyone around her smile. Then came Taylor, the school librarian, with his collection of vintage bow ties and endless book recommendations. They didn't just hear me, they listened. They didn't just see my art, they understood what I was trying to say through it. My apartment became my sanctuary. A small one-bedroom with large windows that flooded the space with perfect northern light. I filled it with plants, thrift store furniture I'd refinished myself, and my own artwork hanging on every wall. For the first time, I felt like I was creating a life that was authentically mine. Contact with my family dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional text message. It hurt, but in some ways the distance was easier than the constant reminder of my invisibility when in their presence. Then Sophia got engaged to her college sweetheart, a neurosurgeon, who my parents instantly adored. The engagement seemed to soften everyone. My mother called more frequently sometimes just to chat. My father sent me an expensive set of professional-grade watercolors for Christmas with a note that said, "For our artist." Sophia herself reached out to repair our strained relationship, admitting she'd been oblivious to how differently we'd been treated. When my 28th birthday approached, I felt hopeful. Maybe we had all grown. Maybe there was room in our family narrative for both the brilliant scientist and the dedicated artist. I decided to plan a small dinner at Luciana's, my favorite Italian restaurant in Portland. The owner, an elderly woman who'd taken a liking to me, always saved her best table by the window when I made a reservation. I sent proper invitations 3 weeks in advance. My parents responded with a phone call saying they'd love to come and would book flights right away. Sophia and her fiancé said they wouldn't miss it. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that my birthday would be different this time. I bought a new dress, emerald green, with delicate beading along the neckline. I splurged on a hair appointment, deciding to try something different with loose curls framing my face. I even cleaned my apartment thoroughly in case everyone wanted to come back for coffee and dessert afterward. The morning of my birthday, my phone lit up with messages from Amanda Taylor and my other Portland friends. My students had made me a card with 28 handprints forming a rainbow. But from my family, there was only silence. I told myself they were probably traveling or busy getting ready. They wouldn't forget. Not after they'd promised. Not this time. I arrived at Luciana's 15 minutes early, my stomach fluttering with equal parts excitement and anxiety. Luciana herself showed me to the special table she'd reserved, a round one by the large window overlooking the garden. Fresh flowers sat in a small crystal vase, and the table was set for 8, just as I'd requested. 4 places for my family, 3 for my closest Portland friends who would join us for dessert, and 1 for me. Special occasion tonight, yes. Luciana smiled, her Italian accent still strong, despite decades in Portland. My family is flying in for my birthday, I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. They've never been to Portland before. Ah, familia, most important thing in life. I bring special wine on the house. As the minutes ticked by, I found myself reflexively smoothing my new dress, checking my lipstick in my compact mirror, rearranging the silverware. The restaurant began to fill with the dinner crowd. Each time the door opened, my head snapped up with anticipation, only to feel a small pang of disappointment when the faces weren't familiar. By 6:15, 15 minutes past our reservation time, I sent a casual text to everyone. At Luciana's, got the window table, can't wait to see you all. The server came by, a kind young woman named Jessie, who I recognized from previous visits. Would you like to order a drink while you wait? Just water for now, thanks. My family should be here any minute. They're coming from the airport. By 6:45, I sent another text. Everything okay, restaurant filling up fast. Hope you didn't get lost. 7 o'clock came and went. I ordered a glass of wine. Jessie brought it with a basket of bread, her eyes filled with a sympathy I didn't want to see. I forced myself to sip slowly, still believing there must be a good explanation. A delayed flight. Traffic from the airport. Maybe they'd stopped at their hotel first to freshen up. Would you like to order some appetizers while you wait? Jessie asked, when she came to refill my water glass. I nodded, ordering the calamari and bruschetta. Enough to share when they arrived, but something I could eat alone if necessary. The thought made my throat tighten. At 7:30, I called my father's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried my mother, then Sophia. No answer from either of them. I sent more texts. The appetizers came. I picked at them without tasting anything, aware of the glances from nearby tables. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram, something to occupy my hands and eyes other than the untouched place settings across from me. The first post in my feed was from Sophia, posted just 30 minutes ago. It showed my family gathered around an elegantly set table, champagne glasses raised in a toast. The caption read, Celebrating the most special news with my favorite people, hash blessed, hash family time. My hands began to shake so badly I nearly dropped my phone into my wine glass. They weren't coming. They were never planning to come. They were at some restaurant in Boston celebrating Sophia again while I sat alone on my birthday making excuses to a pitying server. At 8:15, after 2.5 excruciating hours, I finally worked up the courage to call my mother again. This time she answered on the fourth ring. "Danielle, can this wait, sweetie? We're in the middle of dinner." I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Mom, it's my birthday dinner. The one you and Dad and Sophia promised to come to. I've been sitting here for over 2 hours waiting for you." There was a pause, the clink of silverware and muffled voices in the background. Then my mother's voice, slightly distant, as if she'd pulled the phone away from her mouth. "It's just Danielle. Something about her birthday." The casual dismissal made my chest physically ache. When she returned to the call, her voice held the familiar tone of impatience she reserved for interruptions. "Danielle, I'm sorry, but that was next weekend, wasn't it? Besides, we're busy celebrating something that actually matters. Your sister and James just announced they're expecting you're going to be an aunt. Surely your dinner can wait until another time." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, as the restaurant around me blurred through unshed tears. They hadn't forgotten. It was worse than that. They'd simply decided once again that I wasn't important enough. "I understand," I said finally, my voice coming from somewhere outside myself. "Congratulations to Sophia and James." I hung up before she could respond, before my voice could break and betray me. I set my phone face down on the table and stared at the flickering candle, watching it swim and distort through the tears I refused to let fall. Not here. Not where people could see. The women's restroom at Luciana's was mercifully empty when I finally couldn't hold back the tears any longer. I locked myself in the largest stall, sat fully clothed on the closed toilet lid, and pressed my fist against my mouth to muffle the sobs that wrenched themselves from my chest. It was a pain so familiar and yet somehow fresh each time, like a wound that never fully healed before being torn open again. I flashed back to my 10th birthday when my parents had promised to take me to the Museum of Fine Arts, but had forgotten entirely, leaving me dressed up and waiting by the front door until evening. To my 16th, when the small family dinner they'd planned was canceled because Sophia had unexpectedly qualified for a prestigious academic competition. To my college graduation, when they'd arrived late and left early because Sophia had a final exam the next day. I'd spent my life making excuses for them, finding reasons why it was understandable, even reasonable, that I always came second. My sister was younger and needed more attention. My parents were busy professionals with demanding careers. My accomplishments were simply less objectively impressive than Sophia's. But sitting in a restaurant bathroom stall on my 28th birthday, it was becoming impossible to maintain those rationalizations. The truth was simpler and more painful. They just didn't care about me the way they cared about Sophia. I wasn't a priority and never had been. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, eyes red but tears dried. Jessie had cleared away the barely touched appetizers and was waiting with gentle efficiency. "Would you like to order dinner, or should I bring the check?" She asked, no judgment in her voice. "Just the check, please. I'm not very hungry anymore." As she processed my payment, she returned with a small plate holding a chocolate truffle with a single candle. "From Luciana," she said softly. "She said to tell you happy birthday." The small kindness from a restaurant owner who knew me only as a regular customer broke something inside me all over again. I thanked her, left a tip that was probably too large, and walked out into the cool Portland evening alone. The walk back to my apartment was a blur. Streets I knew well seemed strange and distorted, as if I were seeing them through someone else's eyes. The city continued around me. Friday night, revelers laughing and couples holding hands, everyone connected to someone while I moved through their midst like a ghost. My apartment, which had felt so cozy that morning, now seemed to mock me with its cheerful decorations. I'd hung a small banner across the living room wall. A birthday cake sat in the refrigerator, bought for the small after-dinner gathering that would never happen. A bottle of champagne chilled beside it. I changed out of my carefully chosen dress, scrubbed the makeup from my face, and pulled on my oldest, softest sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt. Then I sat on my couch in the dark, phone in hand, scrolling through the happy birthday messages from the people who had remembered who did care. Amanda's text came through at 10:37 p.m. "How was the big family dinner? Did your parents love Luciana's as much as you do?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. They didn't come. None of them came. Her response was immediate. "What are you home? I'm coming over. Don't argue." 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Amanda stood there with a grocery store ice cream cake in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. Behind her was Taylor carrying a small gift bag. "Birthday emergency response team," Amanda announced, pushing past me into the apartment. "Where are your wine glasses?" I stood dumbly in my own doorway. "You guys don't have to do this. It's almost 11. Taylor guided me gently back inside. "Of course we do. It's your birthday, and you're our friend, and you're hurting. What else would we do?" As Amanda poured wine and Taylor lit the candles on the slightly melted ice cream cake, I found myself telling them everything. Not just about tonight, but about all of it, the entire pattern of my life as the invisible daughter. Words poured out of me that I'd never spoken aloud before, feelings I'd barely acknowledged to myself. I keep thinking if I just accomplish enough, or if I'm understanding enough of their limitations, or if I need them less obviously, they'll finally see me, I said, wine glass cradled between my palms. But they never do, and I don't know how to make them. "Honey," Amanda said, tucking her legs underneath her on my couch, "you can't make someone see your worth. They either do or they don't. And that's about them, not about you." Taylor nodded. "My therapist calls it looking for water in an empty well. You keep going back to the same dry source, hoping this time there will be something to drink. The thing is," Amanda continued, cutting generous slices of cake, "your parents are missing out on knowing an incredible person. That's their loss, though I know it doesn't feel that way." "She's right," Taylor said. "Do you know what my favorite thing about you is? When you talk about your students' art projects, you light up from within. You see possibility and beauty in everything. Your parents are missing that light because they're too busy looking elsewhere." For the first time that day, I felt a genuine smile form on my lips. "When did you get so wise, Taylor?" "Librarians know everything," he deadpanned. "It's our superpower." We ended up having an impromptu midnight birthday party right there in my living room. We ate ice cream cake that had melted into more of a sundae. We drank wine and shared stories. Amanda told us about her own complicated relationship with her mother. Taylor admitted he hadn't spoken to his father in years after coming out. These were things I'd never known about my closest friends' wounds they carried that mirrored my own. Around 1 a.m, Amanda insisted on taking a selfie of the three of us, cheeks flushed from wine forks still in hand, genuine smiles on our faces. "There," she said, showing me the photo. "This is your real birthday celebration. These are the people who showed up." For the first time since that devastating phone call, I felt something other than hurt. I felt seen. I woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close, and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment I was disoriented, especially when I realized I was still on the couch, a throw blanket tucked around me. Then I heard quiet voices from my kitchen and remembered. Amanda and Taylor had stayed. They'd refused to leave me alone, insisting on camping out in my living room. Now they were moving quietly around my kitchen, trying not to wake me while they made breakfast. I sat up, running a hand through my tangled hair, and felt something shift inside me. A clarity I hadn't expected. For 28 years, I'd been chasing approval from people who were constitutionally incapable of giving it to me. I'd been setting myself up for disappointment again and again, hoping for a different outcome that never came. What if I stopped? What if I accepted that my parents would always see me as secondary and built a life with people who saw me as essential instead? "She's awake," Taylor announced, appearing in the doorway with a mug of coffee. Amanda's making her famous hangover pancakes, though, to be fair, we didn't drink that much. Speak for yourself, Amanda called from the kitchen. Some of us are lightweights. The normalcy of the moment, the casual affection in their banter wrapped around me like a protective shield. These people had dropped everything on a Friday night to sit with me in my sadness. They'd never once made me feel like an obligation or an interruption. "What are you thinking about?" Taylor asked, settling beside me on the couch. "You've got your contemplative artist face on." "I'm thinking that maybe it's time I stopped waiting for my family to become something they're not." He nodded slowly. "That's a hard realization, but a liberating one, too." Amanda appeared with a stack of pancakes. "Whatever you decide, we're with you. And by the way, we're having a proper birthday celebration for you tonight. No arguments." "I'm working tonight," I protested weakly. "No, you're not. I already texted your manager at the gallery and told him you had a family emergency," which, by the way, is absolutely true. The day unfolded with the gentleness I needed. We ate pancakes and watched bad reality TV. I took a long shower and put on clothes that made me feel good, not clothes meant to impress anyone else. By late afternoon, my apartment had filled with more people. James from my figure drawing class brought his guitar. Diana from the apartment upstairs came with homemade guacamole. Marissa, a former student now in high school, who sometimes helped at the gallery, arrived with a painting she'd made just for me. It wasn't the birthday I'd planned, but as I looked around my living room at these people who'd chosen to be there, I realized it was better. There was no tension, no need to make myself smaller, no watching my words to avoid disapproval. Just genuine connection with people who wanted nothing from me except my authentic self. When Amanda insisted on taking another group photo, all of us crowded together in my small living room, arms around each other, laughing at trying to fit everyone in the frame. I felt a surge of something that felt surprisingly like gratitude. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd found instead. Later, when everyone was occupied with music and conversation, I took my phone and looked at the photo Amanda had sent me. There I was in the center, surrounded by people whose eyes held genuine affection. Without overthinking it, I uploaded the picture to Instagram and wrote a simple caption, "Grateful for the family that chose me." My finger hovered over the screen as I considered whether to tag my parents and Sophia. A small hurting part of me wanted them to see what they'd missed, to feel even a fraction of the exclusion I'd felt. But that felt petty, like using these genuine connections to make a point. In the end, I tagged only the people who were actually in the photo, the ones who had shown up. Within minutes, the post started getting likes and comments. My Portland friends, of course, but also former classmates, distant relatives, and colleagues. Messages of birthday wishes and affirmations of the family we create for ourselves. I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the wine I'd been sipping. Then my phone rang. Sophia's name and face appeared on the screen. I stepped onto my small balcony to take the call. "Danielle, are you okay?" My sister's voice held concern, but also something else. Guilt, maybe? "I'm fine," I said, surprised to find that I mostly meant it. "Just celebrating my birthday with friends." "I saw your post," she said, her voice smaller now. "Mom and Dad are pretty upset about it." Of course they were upset. Not about missing my birthday, but about how it might look to others. "I didn't say anything negative," I pointed out. "I just posted a photo with the people who were here for my birthday." But the caption, "Danny," about chosen family, everyone can read between the lines. I leaned against the balcony railing, looking out at the Portland skyline. Maybe they should be asking why those lines exist to read between Sophia. "They had no idea it was important to you," she said, but her tone lacked conviction. "Mom said she told you we were celebrating my pregnancy news." After I'd been sitting alone in a restaurant for hours, I said, keeping my voice level. After I'd sent multiple texts and calls that everyone ignored. After I'd watched you post about your special family celebration without any acknowledgement that it was my birthday or that you'd all promised to be here. Silence stretched between us. Then, I didn't realize it was that bad. I'm sorry, Danny. For the first time in our relationship, I didn't rush to make her feel better, to smooth things over, to be the understanding one. Instead, I simply said, "Thank you for the apology. I appreciate it. Are you going to take the post down? Mom's really upset." "No," I said with a certainty that surprised me. "I'm not. There's nothing untrue or unkind about celebrating the people who showed up for me." "Mom says," Sophia began, but I cut her off. "I need to get back to my guests now. Congratulations again on your pregnancy. That's wonderful news." I ended the call before she could respond and rejoined the party, pushing thoughts of my family to the back of my mind. Tonight was about joy, not hurt. About presence, not absence. It was nearly midnight when everyone finally left with hugs and promises to get together again soon. As I closed the door behind the last guest, I felt exhausted but at peace. Whatever happened with my family, I knew now that I wasn't alone. That was worth celebrating. 3 hours after posting that photo, an insistent knocking jolted me from sleep. Disoriented, I stumbled to the door in the t-shirt and shorts I'd fallen asleep in, squinting at the clock on my microwave. Just past 3 in the morning. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway. My mother's arms were crossed tightly over her chest, her face set in the expression I knew meant she was furious. My father stood slightly behind her, his face harder to read in the dim hallway light. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But they'd clearly seen the light go on when I'd gotten up, and knowing my mother, she would stand there knocking all night if necessary. I opened the door but didn't step back to invite them in. "Mom, Dad, it's the middle of the night. What are you doing here?" My mother pushed past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. "What were you thinking posting that passive-aggressive nonsense on social media? Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" My father followed more hesitantly, offering me an awkward pat on the shoulder as he passed. "Your mother was very upset, Danielle. We caught a red eye." I closed the door slowly, trying to process the fact that my parents had flown across the country, not because they'd missed my birthday, but because I dared to post a happy photo without them. "I'm sorry you felt embarrassed," I said, defaulting to the apology that had been my first response for as long as I could remember. "That wasn't my intention." "Then what exactly was your intention?" My mother paced my small living room, taking in the birthday decorations still hanging on the walls, the empty wine glasses and plates I hadn't yet cleaned up. "To publicly shame your family, to make it look like we abandoned you." "Catherine," my father interjected, "perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this calmly." My mother whirled on him. "Don't start, Richard. This is exactly why she pulls these stunts, because you always coddle her." The familiar dynamic unfolded before me. My mother's anger, my father's ineffectual attempts at peacemaking, and my own shrinking presence. Except this time, something about it struck me as absurd. They had flown across the country not to celebrate my birthday or apologize for missing it, but to chastise me for daring to celebrate without them. "It wasn't a stunt," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I was celebrating my birthday with the people who were actually there." "Don't take that tone with me," my mother snapped. "We have always supported you, even with your—" She gestured vaguely at the paintings on my walls. "Art hobby. It's my career, Mom, and you've never supported it. We paid for your college education. For a degree you constantly reminded me was impractical. And then you didn't even attend my graduation because Sophia had an exam the next day." My mother's eyes narrowed. "You've always been jealous of your sister's achievements. This attention-seeking behavior has got to stop, Danielle. You're 28 years old, for God's sake." Something inside me, some dam that had held back years of hurt and disappointment, finally broke. "Attention-seeking, is that what you think this is about? I just wanted my family at my birthday dinner. The dinner you all promised to attend, and then didn't even bother to call and cancel. I sat in that restaurant for almost 3 hours, Mom. I watched the door every time it opened, hoping it would be you." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Danny, sweetheart, we got caught up in Sophia's news. You know how excited we are about becoming grandparents. I do know that, and I'm happy for Sophia. But it was my birthday, Dad. Just once, just for one day, I wanted to be the priority. This is exactly what I'm talking about, my mother cut in. This constant need to be the center of attention. I really looked at her, and saw something I'd never fully acknowledged before. She would never understand. She would never see the pattern of exclusion and dismissal, because in her mind it was the natural order of things. Sophia mattered more. It was as simple and as devastating as that. I don't need to be the center of attention, I said quietly. I just need to matter too. Of course you matter, my father said automatically. When? I asked, looking directly at him now. When have I ever been your priority? Name one important event in my life that you didn't miss or reschedule or leave early from because of something involving Sophia. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched damning in its emptiness. That's what I thought, I said. This is ridiculous, my mother declared. We've always treated you and your sister exactly the same. I gave a hollow laugh. Mom, that's so far from the truth it would be funny if it weren't so painful. You've never missed a single one of Sophia's events. Not one. But you've barely been present for any of mine. That's different. Sophia's achievements are more important, more impressive, more worthy of your time, I finished for her. That's exactly my point. My mother's face flushed with anger. I will not stand here and be accused of favoritism by my own daughter. That post was childish and vindictive, and you will take it down immediately. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down in the face of her anger. I didn't apologize or try to smooth things over. Instead, I straightened my spine and said, no. Excuse me? She looked genuinely shocked, as if it had never occurred to her that I might refuse. I said no. I won't take it down. There was nothing untrue about what I posted. Those people showed up for me when my own family didn't. They dropped everything to make sure I didn't spend my birthday alone. They are my chosen family, and I'm grateful for them. Danielle Grace Thompson. My mother's voice took on the dangerous quality it had when I was a child being scolded. You will not disrespect us like this. I'm not the one who showed disrespect. I said, my voice shaking but determined. You are. By making promises you never intended to keep. By making me feel my entire life like I was never quite good enough to deserve your full attention. By showing up at my door in the middle of the night, not to apologize, but to demand that I hide the evidence of your neglect. My father stepped forward, hands outstretched in a placating gesture. Danny, we never meant to make you feel that way. We love you. Maybe we've made mistakes, but... Speak for yourself, Richard, my mother interrupted. I've done nothing wrong. If Danielle chooses to interpret our actions in the most negative light possible, that's her decision. I looked between my parents, suddenly exhausted beyond words. I think you should go now. We are not finished with this discussion, my mother insisted. Yes, we are. At least for tonight. It's after 3 a.m, I'm tired, and nothing productive is going to come from continuing this conversation right now. Danielle. Please leave, I said, moving to open the front door. We can talk again when everyone's had some sleep and cooled down. My father took my mother's elbow, gently guiding her toward the door. She's right, Catherine. Let's go back to the hotel. We can continue this tomorrow. My mother looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have convinced her it would be futile. With a final glare that held equal parts anger and bewilderment, she allowed my father to lead her into the hallway. As I closed the door behind them, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. I slid down to sit on the floor back against the door and let the tears come. But for the first time, they weren't tears of hurt or rejection. They were tears of release, of finally speaking truths I'd kept buried for a lifetime. The days following that late-night confrontation were a strange mixture of emotional exhaustion and unexpected clarity. I called in sick to work on Monday, something I rarely did, and spent the day in a sort of daze alternating between bursts of empowered energy and periods of profound sadness. My parents made no attempt to contact me the next day, and I didn't reach out to them either. I needed space to process what had happened, to understand the seismic shift that had occurred in our relationship. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground with them, refused to accept the familiar narrative that my feelings and needs were less valid than my sister's. By Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting on my couch sketching aimlessly when Amanda texted to check in. Within 15 minutes, she was at my door with takeout and a sympathetic ear. I told her everything about my parents' midnight visit, the confrontation, and my unprecedented refusal to back down. "I'm proud of you," she said simply when I finished. "That took incredible courage." "I don't feel courageous," I admitted. "I feel terrified, like I've blown up the only version of my family I've ever known, and now I don't know what happens next." "That's exactly why it was brave. You chose truth over comfort, even though the truth is scary and uncomfortable." That evening, Sophia called again. Her voice was subdued, caught between family loyalties. "Mom and Dad are still in Portland," she said. "Dad says they're staying at the Nines. Have they told you what happened?" "Some of it," she hesitated. "Dad's version and Mom's version are pretty different." "And which do you believe?" Another pause. "I don't know, Danny. I've never seen Mom like this. She keeps saying you've always been oversensitive, but Dad, he's been really quiet. He asked me if I thought they'd favored me growing up." "And what did you say?" I held my breath, uncertain if I wanted to hear her answer. "I said I never noticed it, which is true, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen." Her voice softened. "I'm starting to think about a lot of things differently, like how they came to every single one of my science competitions, but I can't remember them ever going to your art shows. I just never questioned it before." It was the first time my sister had ever acknowledged, even indirectly, the disparity in our parents' treatment. A tiny crack in the family mythology we'd all participated in maintaining. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "I'm sorry about your birthday, Danny. I should have remembered, even if they didn't." Later that week, I started seeing a therapist, something I'd considered for years but had never followed through on. Dr. Winters was a calm, insightful woman who helped me understand the family dynamics that had shaped me and how to begin setting healthier boundaries. "What you're experiencing is a grief process," she explained during one session. "You're mourning the family you wanted and needed but never had." "Will it always hurt this much?" I asked. "No," she said with gentle certainty. "The pain changes shape over time. It becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you." Meanwhile, my circle of friends grew closer and more supportive. Taylor invited me to a weekly game night with his partner and friends. Amanda made sure I never spent too much time alone with my thoughts. My students' unbridled enthusiasm for art reminded me daily why I'd chosen this path regardless of my parents' approval. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I received an email from my father. It was awkwardly formal, as his communications often were, but beneath the stiffness, I could sense a genuine attempt to reach across the divide. "Dear Danielle," he wrote, "I've been doing a lot of thinking since our discussion in Portland. Your mother and I have had several difficult conversations about the points you raised. While she is still hurt by the public nature of your post, I have come to recognize that there may be truth in what you said about our family dynamics over the years." He went on to apologize specifically and concretely for missing my birthday dinner. No excuses, no qualifications, just a straightforward acknowledgement of hurt caused and regret felt. "I cannot change the past," he concluded, "but I would like to do better going forward if you're willing to give me that chance. Your mother needs more time, but I hope eventually she too will come to understand your perspective. I am proud of the woman and artist you have become, Danielle, even if I haven't always shown it adequately." I read the email several times, tears blurring the screen. It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning, a small bridge extending from his side toward mine. I responded with equal care, neither rushing to forgive nor holding on to anger, but acknowledging his effort and expressing cautious hope for a new kind of relationship between us. "I don't need perfect parents," I wrote. "I just need parents who see me." 1 month after my birthday, my artwork was featured in a local gallery showing. It was a series I'd been working on for nearly a year, exploring themes of visibility, connection, and chosen family. The gallery owner had been particularly moved by a triptych that showed figures gradually coming into focus, emerging from shadow into vibrant color. I hadn't sent an invitation to my family, but I hadn't explicitly excluded them either. I'd mentioned the showing in my email exchanges with my father, leaving an opening without creating an expectation. Setting boundaries, my therapist called it. Protecting myself while remaining open to positive change. The opening night was busy, the gallery filled with Portland's art community, and many of my students and their parents. Amanda and Taylor had helped set up the refreshment table, and now moved through the crowd, chatting easily with strangers. I was discussing my use of light with an interested collector when I felt a presence at my elbow and turned to find my father standing there looking slightly out of place in his East Coast business casual attire. "Dad?" I said, unable to hide my surprise. "You came." He nodded, hands in his pockets, eyes moving from me to the painting behind me. "Is this a bad time? I can wait until you're finished." "No, it's fine. This is..." I turned to the collector, who smiled and graciously moved on to another piece, giving us privacy. For a moment we stood in awkward silence, both unsure how to navigate this new territory between us. "These are really something, Danny," he finally said, gesturing to the paintings. "I don't know much about art, but even I can see there's something special here." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by his effort. "Where's Mom?" "At the hotel. She's not ready yet." He looked apologetic. "She's struggling with all of this more than I am." "I understand." And surprisingly, I did. My mother's entire identity was wrapped up in a certain narrative about our family, about her success as a parent. My challenge to that narrative threatened something fundamental in her self-concept. "Would you show me around?" my father asked hesitantly. "Explain your work to me. I'd like to understand it better." As I guided him through the gallery, explaining my techniques and inspirations, I watched his face carefully. For the first time, I could remember he was truly looking at my art, asking questions, listening to the answers. There was no checking his watch, no distracted glances at his phone. Just presence, attention, genuine interest. "I never realized how much thought goes into each piece," he said as we paused before a particularly complex canvas. "Or how much of yourself you put into them." "That's the point of art, Dad. It's communication. Expressing things that can't always be put into words." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the triptych that anchored the show. "Like this one. It's about feeling invisible, isn't it? And then finally being seen." Something caught in my throat at his simple but accurate interpretation. Yes, exactly. Later, over coffee at a quiet cafe near the gallery, my father shared what had been happening since our confrontation. "Your mother and we've been having some difficult conversations. She doesn't see things the way you do, the way I'm starting to. But she's agreed to try family therapy when we all feel ready." Really? Mom agreed to therapy. It was hard to imagine my mother, with her fierce pride and self-certainty, willingly putting herself in a position to be critiqued or questioned. "It took some convincing," he admitted with a slight smile. "But I think underneath her anger she's afraid. Afraid that she's failed you somehow, and by extension failed herself. Your mother has always held herself to impossibly high standards, and transferred those to Sophia," I said quietly. He nodded, looking down at his coffee cup. "Yes, and perhaps that wasn't fair to either of you." "It wasn't," I agreed. "But recognizing that is a start. Your sister misses you, you know. She calls me every day asking if we've spoken, if there's been any progress." "I miss her too," I admitted. "This isn't her fault. She didn't create the dynamic, she just benefited from it. She's trying to understand. We all are," He reached across the table and briefly touched my hand, a gesture so uncharacteristic I almost pulled back in surprise. "I'm proud of you, Danielle. Not just for your art, though that's remarkable. I'm proud of your courage in forcing us all to face some uncomfortable truths. It wasn't everything. It wasn't a complete healing of decades of hurt and neglect. But sitting across from my father in that cafe, seeing genuine effort in his eyes, I felt something shift inside me. A cautious hope that perhaps we could build something new from the rubble of what had been broken. The next few months brought small, incremental changes. My mother eventually sent a stiff but sincere apology by email, acknowledging that while she might not see things exactly as I did, she was sorry for the hurt I'd experienced. Sophia and I began having regular video calls, rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. My father sent articles about art exhibitions he thought might interest me and asked questions about my teaching methods. 6 months after that disastrous birthday, we attempted a do-over dinner when my parents and Sophia visited Portland together. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, old patterns threatening to reassert themselves. But there were also moments of genuine connection, of being seen and heard in ways I'd always craved. The most telling moment came when Amanda and Taylor joined us for dessert, my two worlds colliding for the first time. I watched my chosen family and my birth family interact, finding unexpected points of connection. My father and Taylor discovered a shared love of historical documentaries. My mother, despite her initial reserve, seemed genuinely charmed by Amanda's forthright humor. Sophia and I exchanged glances across the table, a silent acknowledgement of the strange new territory we were navigating together. As the evening wound down, my father raised his glass in a toast. "To Danielle," he said simply. "Happy birthday 6 months late. We're glad to be here with you." "To Danielle," everyone echoed, and I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the wine. It wasn't the ending of a fairy tale where all hurts are magically healed and forgotten. It was messier, more complicated, more real. There would still be difficult conversations ahead, moments of misunderstanding and old pain resurfacing. Building healthier relationships would be an ongoing process, not a destination we could reach and then relax. But sitting at that table, surrounded by people who were all making an effort, who all wanted to be there, I realized something profound. My worth had never actually depended on my parents' recognition. It had been there all along, whether they saw it or not. The most precious gift I'd given myself that painful birthday was not the confrontation with my family, though that had been necessary. It was the decision to stop waiting for validation from people who couldn't give it and to start building a life filled with those who could. To create spaces where I felt valued and seen, rather than constantly struggling to be noticed in spaces where I wasn't. As we left the restaurant, walking together through the cool Portland evening, I caught my father looking at me with a mixture of pride and regret that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing my expression. That sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately allow for the most love. I answered honestly. He nodded slowly, understanding more than I would have given him credit for 6 months earlier. And sometimes we don't realize what we've been missing until someone is brave enough to show us. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't see your worth? How did you find the courage to set boundaries while leaving room for healing? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe to join our community of people creating lives filled with authentic connections, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. Thank you for being here. Remember, the family that matters most is the one that makes you feel like you matter.